January 13th, 2026. Well, I have a lot for you in this one tonight, so if the first topic doesn't really grab you, hang on for some of the later ones here because I'm going to be hitting a bunch of things. But let's start off with what's going on in Iran. That's kind of my title topic. We're having a massive set of riots throughout Iran and certainly in the capital city, but in many other places in Iran as well. I've noticed, though, that it looks like that outside of the capital city, when you look around, a lot of the Kurdish areas, let's call them, are highly affected. So I think there could be a degree of ethnic split in this rebellion, as well as everything else, and maybe youth versus the older or whatever. Certainly they're saying a lot of people have been killed so far, and a lot of people have been arrested, and it's looking very chaotic, even a little bit more intense than the George Floyd riots, and certainly a lot more lethal because there they don't just use tear gas and rubber bullets. There they use real bullets. And of course that's got the Trump administration upset, I guess, Trump himself, and a lot of people. I know the prince, the son of the former Shah, has been on TV a lot, encouraging the revolt, and we'll see how it goes. Will this actually bring down the Ayatollahs and the regime we've been dealing with since, 1979? I don't know. On the one hand, I would say, well, it looks pretty shaky over there. On the other hand, I'd have to say that, you have the Revolutionary Guard Corps, which is their hardcore people. And whereas the Shah was ultimately relying on his regular army with a lot of conscripts in it to fight it, I think these people are a little bit more fanatical and determined. So we'll just have to see how that goes. There was a similar kind of a big revolt in I think 2009, which didn't happen. And on the other hand, Trump is threatening some kind of military action. But it's, to me, a little unclear what that would be exactly. I guess if you actually could get the Ayatollah's exact location and bomb them, that would be an idea, I guess. But would that be a good idea or not? And if the thing does spread into total anarchy, does that mean something favorable to our interests come out, or does Iran maybe fragment into regional sections? As I point out, the Kurdish area seems to be the most in revolt, and of course, the Kurds, throughout that whole area, going all the way into Turkey on one side, through northern Iraq, and then on into Iran, you could have a whole major regional instability as well. Although the idea of getting rid of the Ayatollahs does have its appeal, let's say. So we'll just have to watch that one and see what occurs. I don't know what sort of military action Trump is really contemplating, if he has any serious plans. And the problem is, I don't think we really have that many forces in the area. Really, we have enough to, hit ISIS from time to time when they do something and things like that. But at the same time, those bases are pretty much vulnerable to large-scale Iranian missile attacks too. So that leaves us, and also a U.S. military action against Iran at this point might bring a nationalistic reaction from those that aren't rioting, that aren't part of this. These disturbances can always look like they have a lot more support than they may really have. I mean, was most people really behind the George Floyd effort? But anyhow, so we'll have to see how that plays out. But if you like these videos, please give me a like, subscribe, click the bell for notifications. Or also you can follow me on and subscribe to me on Rumble as well, whichever would be better for you. So as I said, we have a whole bunch of other issues to hit here. One of them I thought is kind of interesting, just showed up, is the claims that the U.S. used some kind of a weapon against a secret weapon, you might say, against the Cuban troops that were protecting Maduro. And they've described it as like feeling like their head was going to explode from inside, and nose were bleeding and so forth, vomiting blood or whatever. So what was this? My guess is this was probably a sonic weapon using what's called subsonics frequencies, which are below the hearing level and probably at fairly high intensity levels that would cause this kind of effect on people. I mean, things of that sort have been experimented with before. There are other ideas that use microwaves also, and I guess that would be the alternative possibility if the sonic theory is incorrect. And so I don't know what the effect of that was. He was discussing really massive fatalities. So I don't. This can be very, very dangerous. So apparently that was part of the attack, which may have made it go as easily for us as it was reported. The other aspect is you have a lot of very high-tech weaponry against probably a fairly low-tech enemy when it really comes down to it, and including all of our advanced electronic warfare capabilities to disable radars and stuff. And there's also the rumors floating around that could have been a lot of inside job going on too, that somebody had basically not alerted the troops to fight, and so a lot of them were caught unprepared, and that was maybe part of a deal that we made, like a sort of intelligence agency level thing with maybe some cash and that. So we don't know which. So all this definitely played into it, but this a new secret weapon is kind of an interesting development, I think, and that's got some real play here. On other topics, I'll have to get into this one. That somebody decided to local prosecutors, I guess, at U.S. Attorney's office in, I guess, at D.C., I believe it is, actually is starting an investigation into Jay Powell, the head of the Federal Reserve Board, and I'm not sure. It seems like it had something to do with some testimony he gave to the Congress, and sort of a perjury type charge issue, allegedly. And I don't know. This may have to do with the funding of some renovations at the Federal Reserve building that President Trump had been critical before. Now, President Trump says he knows nothing about this or has nothing to do with this particular investigation. So it's hard to know whether that's actually the case or whether. But it could just as well be that he's certainly said enough negative things about Powell that it could very well be some U.S. attorney looking forward to potential appointment to a judgeship or something. So we'll have to see what that is. Another thing about that is it's possible that this could ultimately backfire. I mean, the probability of really getting a conviction in D.C. once this gets politicized enough, I don't know. Of course, we're not dealing with really a popular figure for most people, and they'll be on the juries. As they always say about grand juries, they can usually indict a ham sandwich. So we'll see how this goes. I tend to think this is not going to really lead to a conviction, but you never know. Remember, so we'll just have to watch that one and kind of, Another issue that I want to kind of get into, and here I'm going to kind of diverge a bit from Trump. I mean, normally, I'm pretty much just backing Trump on just about everything. But this whole Greenland thing is just kind of getting to me. Now, first of all, I agree that there's a lot of strategic significance to Greenland. Greenland, is a base of one of our most important early warning systems for missile attack that could be coming over the North Pole from Russia or China, right? I mean, this radar system there is a very critical part of our strategic early warning system, and there are no doubt other things there that are interesting. There is this whole competition in the Arctic that we've talked about that I guess Russia and is interested in, but they're kind of on the other side of the North Pole from this, really, and there's almost no likelihood that either Russia or China are going to take Greenland. I mean, obviously, unless we're really asleep at the switch, we would see that coming a long ways away. And remember, our fleet, the Atlantic Fleet, is dominant in that region. So we should be able to quickly intervene with all sorts of capability, as we saw in Venezuela, right? And deal with any threat of that sort that might materialize. So I'm sitting going, this is just crazy as far as I can see. In fact, if the whole issue had never been raised in the last year, in my opinion, whatever we needed to do in Greenland in terms of basing national security, I'm sure that Denmark would have agreed to. I mean, I don't. This is so strange to me. I don't know. This is one of the real aberrations of this administration. I can't figure out. But we'll see what comes of that. I've posted that it looks to me like maybe Denmark should be fairly smart to just simply name a price for it, and a fairly high price, and see if Congress would really appropriate the money to buy it. Because I'm not sure that Congress would appropriate any significant amount of money to buy it. I mean, like if they were asking, I've suggested, what about, well, $1 trillion? So let's say make it 999 billion, to make it look, not like we're just being, and I would think that there's no way they'd appropriate that. I doubt they'd appropriate 100 billion for it. Maybe I'm wrong on that one. Maybe you get down to that level, it might be doable. But remember, you're probably going to have a combination of every Democrat plus the budget hawks together saying no dice. So, but we'll see on that one. I think that's kind of one of the real idiosyncrasies that we have going on right now, and we'll have to see. Also, of course, we have the ongoing result, the shooting of Ms. Good, who wasn't very good there, was she, in Minnesota, and it seems like these protests have spread throughout the country. So, it's kind of tough being an ICE agent out there right now, and maybe it's getting time to maybe reconsider bringing out the National Guard again under federal authority. I mean, there was a little bit of a blip a while back with the Supreme Court, but remember that we need to have an adequate predicate to do this. And I think they didn't totally say it was wrong on principle. They simply said they hadn't provided adequate justification. If these insurrectionist movements by all these crazy anti-ICE protesters continue, there might be sufficient justification to get it through the court. I think that sometimes Trump's too often talks like he just wants to do something and therefore he's going to do it, rather than simply laying back a little bit and let the facts develop the case for what he wants to do, and then he does it and nobody really cares. Otherwise, speaking of court, we're also waiting to see what happens on the legality of the tariffs. That's supposed to be coming up any Friday now, either this one or the next one or whatever, and we don't know how that's going to go. I mean, Trump is saying, hey, it's going to really mess things up big time if they don't approve it. And to some degree, I kind of agree. I would be very critical of the court on this particular basis. If they were to turn it over now, while letting it go as far as it did without putting an injunction on it, in my opinion, that they're the ones that are really messing things up. I mean, if they really thought it was a bad thing when these cases first arose, I'm sure they could have gone with an injunction months ago and not created the problem it would be if you now turn against it at this point in time. We'll just have to wait and see what they do. I hope, if nothing else, they kind of find a way to weasel word their way through it and let it continue for now. One way would be to say that it can continue as long as there's a state of emergency. Remember, the state of the emergency was the magnitude of the balance of payments deficit. That was the original justification. Well, perhaps if the tariffs are left in place for another year or so or two, maybe that problem would be solved, and therefore then the justification of continuing then might be an issue, right? As opposed to simply saying, no, he can't do what he did, or yes, he can do anything he wants. You could have an intermediate outcome, for instance. So we'll see how that plays out, and and so that's about it for this time. I just want to hit all these key issues, and one other thing I want to mention before I get out of this. James Fox has a new version of his video, A Moment of Contact, in which he addresses a UFO crash in Varginha, Brazil, which is very analogous to the Roswell incident from 1947 in the U.S., except for this. The aliens actually got into the town and were living, at least some of them were, most of them were, when right after the crash, and people saw them. And there's a fair amount of information developed from ex-military people, or at least ones that are incognito, civilians, young girls, and highly acclaimed, locally acclaimed doctors, very senior doctors, all have something to say about it. So it's a very interesting video for anybody that's interested in the UAP subject. So anyway, I'll be wrapping this up for now, and I'll be posting this on YouTube and Rumble as always, and the address of my social media accounts in the description below. So all for this time.